Good morning, mommies, wherever you are. Welcome to the Home Club. This is our fourth week for the fall semester in our series of Who Am I and What About Me? If you remember from last week, we were talking about purpose over perfection. And we talked about several things, that sometimes when you are so much into perfection, you just spend your time going crazy, or you just say, I don't want to do it. And you know what? I think we all experience that. I experienced that this week of going, I just can't do it right, so I'm just not going to do it. And then I had to remind myself, who am I working unto? What is my true purpose? What has God called me to? And so I ask Him to give me steadfastness so that I can get through what I need to get through. And I encourage all of you, whatever you need. Remember, we talked about our 3x5 cards. Ask the Lord what He wants to be working through you with. And then the week before, we talked about motherhood and how we have that motherhood is a short season. It goes by really fast. We talked about the season is a high calling. Remember, your high calling is a mommy, and that is really your purpose right now. Yes, you do other things, but that is your purpose. And then we also talked about a new season of choices, which comes into what we talked about last week about purpose over perfection. What are the choices that you have to make your life work? What do you have to let go of? And sometimes it's very sacrificial. You may not be able to do everything that you want to do when you're in your purpose and calling, but it's only for a season. So I encourage you to not get discouraged, but really take to heart what we've talked about those last 2 weeks. And if you remember, your homework last week was, when you find yourself getting stressed because of feeling like you have to or you have to be, that you were to stop. Ask yourself, what can I do differently? Pray and ask the Lord to really help you with how to change in the moment so you don't keep doing the same thing over and over again. So please remember that. Remember that through God, all things are possible. He helps you through every single moment of your day. He never leaves you. He never forsakes you. But we need to call on Him and say, Lord, I need your help. That's why your word is so important, because it reminds you in that moment when you're talking about your purpose, wait a minute. And my word this year is steadfast. And for me, it's I can't be moved. I'm not going to change my mind. I'm going to do what God's called me to do, even though sometimes it's challenging. And that's what God wants for all of you, because that's how we have that presence and that peace when we're in our purpose. So before we start for our teaching today, let's go to the Lord. Father, we are so grateful that we get to meet together, either online or in homes. Lord, you are such an awesome God that wants to meet us and change us and give us joy and peace and presence so that we can really enjoy this season of our life, no matter what season we're in, no matter what challenges we're facing. Because Lord, when we let go and surrender and give it all to you, you're the change agent in our lives. So Father, remind us to let it go and let you do the work in us and through us. And we ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. So this week we're going to be talking about mirror, mirror. And we're going to be talking about 3 aspects of mirror, mirror. What do you see when you look in your mirror? What do you see? We're also going to talk about, what are you reflecting? You may have looked in the mirror and you go away, and then what are you reflecting to other people? And then we're going to talk about, what do you want to reflect? Because we have a choice about what we reflect. And we're not going to be perfect in all this, but we need to be aware of it so that we don't always reflect every emotion and every feeling. And those of us that are more emotional, for people that are not as emotional, they think we might be very emotional when really we're holding it back. And people are like, really? You're holding it back? So we're all different, but God wants to change us and work through us so that we are a blessing to the Lord and to other people. So let's get going. So when you look in the mirror, what do you see? what do you see? We usually see what we believe about ourselves. Now, you can have all your coverings on when you're in the mirror and you're putting all your makeup on, you're putting all your clothes on. You know, we all put our coverings on so that we don't really reveal our true self. But you know what? Our true self is what's inside. Even though we can be all dressed up and we can all look like everything's great, what are those thoughts that go through your head as you're looking in the mirror when you really look? You really look in the mirror. Most of us hear things like, I've screwed up. I'm not enough. If people really knew who I was, it ain't matching what I am from my outside. But I really want you to think about, what do you see? And be honest with yourself. And sometimes we are not as self-aware as other people are. And that's why it's so important to have people in your life that can be honest with you. Because a lot of times we can deceive ourselves. We can think, oh, I'm doing fine. I'm good. Everything's going well. I'm good. But when we are vulnerable with other people, they can say to you, like my husband will say, honey, you're really acting stressed right now. No, I'm not. I'm not stressed. Oh, wait. Yes, I am stressed. That is my challenge of something that I'm working on right now. Is as I'm starting being steadfast, I'm trying to have the joy of the Lord and not be stressed. But I don't know where it is for you. But really get real. So when we look in the mirror, we're usually seeing what we believe about ourselves. But where do those belief systems come from? Where did the belief system that you believe about yourself come from? They come from many different places, but we're going to talk about two of them today. One is from your family of origin, your legacy, your ancestors. You know, you probably heard, oh, you're just like Aunt Margaret, or you're just like Uncle Tom, or you're whatever. You've probably heard your family say that. And sometimes it's in a sweet way, and other times it's not so sweet. So we internalize all those messages that we get from when we're little. And do you know what? We literally pick them up in our mother's womb. Your children pick them up in your womb as well. We all are receiving messages, because remember, we're body. You know, I have a body, you have a body. We have a mind that's processing all these thoughts and smells and feelings coming through, and we're also a spirit. Our spirit literally feels and thinks things. So all of those messages that were coming in from when you were little are right now those things that you believe about yourself. And a lot of them are downright lies. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. You're just like, you're going to end up just like, or I can never trust you, or I can never, whatever those situations are. And I hope that this week that you will sit down and write down whatever it is that you are believing about yourself that is not true, that you got from your family. And I'm just going to share a couple ones from my family of origin. I was always late growing up. I never got up in the morning, and I was always late. Now, I loved my parents. I am not dishing them at all. Please understand that. My parents did the best job they could with what they knew and what they had at the time, the same as your parents did and the same as you do. But I was labeled as never getting up in the morning and always being late. Well, guess what? I internalized that. So I really believed that I could never get up in the morning and I could never be on time. And it wasn't until I married Dirk that he challenged me with that. And I can literally remember one morning him saying, Allison was crying, and I said, oh, honey, will you please get up with her? He said, you know what? You have somebody helping you every day of the week. It's Sunday, you get up with her. And I'm like, I'm not a morning person. And he looked at me and said, really? Well, why don't you change and be one now? And I went, really? I could be a morning person? Do you realize that I internalized that lie so deep in my soul that I truly believed that I could never get up in the morning? And that started a process. After he said that to me, it started a process of, wow, I have been believing a lie all these years. Now, you may think that's a simple little lie that I believed. It affected every aspect of my life. Friends couldn't trust me. I was always late for everything. And I had to start thinking, wait a minute, I'm responsible. I'm not going to believe those lies. And now I am known as an on-time person. I am known as getting up in the morning. But do you see how I had to deal with that lie that I believed growing up and really have a mindset change? And I can give you examples of so many others, but I want you to ask yourself, what is something that you're characterized by that you heard growing up that is really a lie? That with God's help and your awareness, you can change. Because God wants to change every one of us. He doesn't want us to remain the same so that we have to put all these coverings on to hide what we really think about ourselves. Because I was always ashamed when I couldn't get up in the morning. I mean, for college, I was always run for work, run. But if I would have known that earlier on in my life, I would have really eliminated so many years of shame and guilt and condemnation from everybody. So get real with what you need to do. And again, there's so many messages that you get from your parents. You get messages that say things like, you have to achieve, or you have to be, or you have to do. And again, ask yourself, what is the truth about those things? So whenever we are believing those lies, they really affect every aspect of our life. Every aspect. And what they really create, if we believe those lies, is they tell us things, and we start to develop basic assumptions about ourselves. They develop insecurities, biases, fears, anxieties, expectations, all of these things that we cover up instead of dealing with the real issues. So deal with the real issues so that you're not living out of that fear or out of that anxiety or the expectations that you go, I'm never going to be able to meet those. Just be real. So as we think about our legacy and our family of origin, we want to really get real with what do we want to take of our legacy from our family? What do you want to take into your family of your legacy? Because there's good things in your family. Your parents did the best job they could with what they had. There's no parents that wake up in the morning and go, you know what, I think today I really want to screw up my kids. That's not what we do. Our parents do the best they can with what they have. And we always need to offer forgiveness to our parents. And we don't want to blame our parents for what our issues are. We want to say, okay, those things may have happened, but what can I do now? I'm not going to live in the past. I'm going to live in the present. And if you're dealing with things that are really hard for you, get some help. Ask somebody to pray with you. Go to the Lord. Ask Him. He will help you. So we are learning all of these things from our legacy. And the second place we're learning, in which you all are being bombarded like no other time in history, is media. And media can be anything from being online to television to movies, anything. Think about the messages that you all are being told. And we talked a little bit about this last week. You've got to be skinny. You got to have it all together. Your kids have to have it all together. You have to post the perfect pictures. You have to do the perfect thing. And it's exhausting. So if you have an issue with media, I have a challenge for you. Go one day. Go one day without going on media. Just one day. And see how you feel the following day. Because when I tell you some statistics about little babies, you're going to be pretty surprised. And I hope that will impact you about your screen time and the screen time that you allow your children on as well. So media is a place where use it for good, but don't use it where you're always filtering it through, I'm not enough, I can't do it, I'm not pretty, I'm not skinny, I'm not like her, I can't do this. Leave it alone. Remember, go back to your purpose of what we talked about last week. And if it is affecting you, get off of it. I know that sounds really scary to say, get off media. But only go onto media that is going to be uplifting and that's going to support you and help you be peaceful and joyful. You know, don't just keep scrolling through Instagram and Facebook. I mean, what does it do for you? Oh, they're on a trip. Oh, they just got a new car. Oh, they just went on an anniversary trip. You know what I mean? All that stuff. And a couple of you are laughing right now because it's real personal. And it is, because we feel so bad when we compare ourselves to other people. But the people that you're seeing who's doing all those great things, you don't know the backstory of what's happening with them. We all have our issues. And so all we're seeing is that snapshot or that video that shows everything great. And really, they're having just as much of a mess as you are, because guess what? When you get a new car, it gets old. When you go on a trip, you still take you and your husband or you and your friend with you, and you still have all the same issues. But it looks so good when you have that perfect picture. So don't believe those lies. We're going to talk a little bit more about your children in a minute, but media really shapes who we are and who we become, and especially with our children. It is so amazing how media has shaped your generation and how it's shaping your children's generation at such a younger age. But we're not going to talk about all that stuff now. The one thing I want you to think about is when you're on media and you're looking at all those different things, when you look in the mirror, are you saying, I've got to do more? I've got to have my kids do more. They've got to be in all these sports. They've got to be in all these activities. They have to do all of this stuff. Are you going, I've got to. And again, if that's making you crazy and just losing your peace, again, think about the choices that you can make to make your life more peaceful. Because all of those things create that confusion and that lack of peace, and just it robs you of your joy and everything in your life. And then you're going to wake up and go, what have I done? Why did I run myself ragged all these years when my kids were little? Because as your kids get older, things get more demanding. So enjoy this peaceful time now. Though I hope you can see that when you look in the mirror, you are seeing what your family and your friends and your teachers and people that were around you said about you. And you're also believing what you see on media, online, on television, through movies. You're internalizing those things. So be careful what you're seeing. But now let's look at, what are you reflecting? We've talked about what you see in the mirror, but what are you reflecting? And we're going to start with your kids. Because remember, kids are sponges, and they literally are little imitators of us. What we internalize, our children will also internalize. They become like us. You know, you've heard that old saying of somebody growing up going, I'll never be like my father. I'll never be like my mother. And then all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, I did that just like my mother or your father. Do you see what I mean? It's just we reflect what we see. So we really want to be conscious in our words, in our facial expressions, in our belief system, and really in our spirit man. Because our children, again, are sponges, but they're also imitators. They will reflect what we shine to them. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but it does mean that you have to be aware so that you can help them when you say, oh, honey, I'm sorry, I was stressed again. You know what, will you pray for mommy not to be stressed? I wish I could go back and have my children pray for me with that so that I could have been more self-aware. And studies show that 95% of all the children learn is caught, not taught. It's not what you say, it's what they see you doing and what they see you feeling, how you act, how you treat neighbors, how you talk to your spouse, the tone of voice you use. All of those things your children are learning. Think about this. Here we live in the United States in 2018. If you are raised in the South, you have a Southern accent. If you're raised in the North, you have more of a Northern accent. Isn't it interesting that here we still are reflecting our voice tones and inflections and all from our parents? I mean, think about that. That's an incredible thing when we think about it. Our children talk just like us. So think about all the other things that they're doing just like us. So if there are things that you don't want your children to internalize, then get healed and get real so that you're not reflecting those things. You know, are you a poor me person so your children are only seeing you as poor me? Are your children seeing you stressed out all the time? Or are they seeing you go, I'm not capable, I can't do this? You know what? They're going to feel like they're not capable, or they're going to think like they're not enough. Because remember, our children identify with what we really believe about what we do, what we have, and what we know. Let me repeat that. Our children really believe what we believe about what we do, what we have, and what we know. So if you are about what we do, you can either be going, well, we're the family that does so much, and that's going to bring pride to your children. Or, oh, we're the family that can't do anything. So they're going to believe like, oh, we can't ever do anything. If it's what we have, well, we don't have everything like everybody else. Or, oh, we have so much. See the difference? It's your attitude. Or what we know. Oh, well, we're a family that is very highly educated. Or, we don't really know very much. Do you see how you can live out of both sides of those lies? And really, if we believe that God gives us everything, and that He's the one that gives us our gifts and our talents, our abilities. I mean, He even says, I make the rich rich and the poor poor for my good purposes. I don't understand that verse, but that's God's way. So we need to say, Lord, what is my calling and purpose? And how do I train my children not to define themselves by what they do, what they have, and what they know? You want to have your children define themselves by who God says they are, by who the Lord is in their life, to say, wow, Davis, do you realize that God has gifted you in this area of being able to fix things? That's my youngest son. And he's incredible at being able to fix things. So it's putting words to what you see their gifts are, and to encourage what you see in them, more than, oh, Davis, you're so smart because you can fix anything. No, God gave him the ability. Davis, you're a blessing because you know how to do so many things, and you're so teachable. You have such an open heart to learn new things. See the difference? It's literally blessing what God has given them, and all you're doing is you're giving them that blessing to pour out to what they're doing. So again, just think about, am I living my life on what do I do, what do I have, and what do I know? Or are you really believing what God says about you? Now, I know when you're a new mommy, you're tired, so you go, okay, all I'm reflecting is I'm tired, I'm hungry, and all I want to do is go to sleep. There are going to be days you're going to have those times where you're not reflecting what you want. And when you do, just tell your children, you know what, Mommy's having a bad day today. Will you pray for me? I'm tired, I didn't sleep. You know, give words to your children so that they know that it's you and not them. Because so many times when we're reflecting things and we're not honest with our kids, guess what they're internalizing? Mommy must be mad at me. Mommy must not be happy because I'm not happy. Mommy must not want me around. Our children, when they're really young, really internalize our feelings. So we need to say, and it's okay to tell your children, you know, Mommy's sad right now because you know how sometimes when you're with a friend and you might have some little issues? Well, you know, sometimes Mommy and Daddy have those things too, because we're both pretty selfish and we kind of want our own way. And so Daddy and I are working through some things. And then let your kids see you work through things. And then when you work it all out, go to your kids and say, you know what, will you forgive me? Will you forgive me for us bringing stress to you when we were fighting? You know what? It had nothing to do with you. And then really pray and ask the Lord to help you. Pray with your husband and say, honey, do you realize that we are reflecting to our children how we are acting and thinking and internalizing? And this may hit some chords with some of you. It does with me, and it still does with me. Just be real with the Lord. He wants to heal you. He really does. He doesn't want you to keep living this way. He wants to come in and tell you you're enough, and you can be enough through him. One quick study I'm going to tell you about that was pretty shocking to me, but they did a study with 14 to 24-month-olds. They let them see this toy, one group having a toy pulled apart, one group playing with a toy, and the third group not seeing any videos at all. So the first group, it was taking a toy apart, the second group was just playing with the toy, and the third group did not see any videos about this toy. Well, after they did that, this was 14 to 24-month-olds. After that, they put the same toy on the table. Do you know that 65% of those 14-month-olds knew how to take that toy apart? 90% of the 24-month-olds could take it apart. Now think about that. Your children are on videos and watching things all the time. They are internalizing those things more than you could ever imagine. The second group was the exact same. The third group, they looked at the toy and really didn't have any interest in it. They kind of looked at it, and a couple of them, I think it was like 10% took it apart and 10% played with it, but it didn't have any meaning to them. What I want you to know from that study is that what your children see and hear, they internalize. 14 months old. So if they're seeing a screen, what do you think they're picking up from you? Because they can feel your emotions and all of that. So again, and if you're having issues, please, if you're on the website, you can email us and we'll pray for you. If you're in home club, please get with your leaders and ask them to pray with you. We've all been prayed for. I've been prayed for so many times for all the issues I have in my life, and I still need more prayer. Because that's God changes us. He's the change agent, not us. So the last question is, what can we do to reflect something different? What can we do? We've talked a little bit about it, but the first thing I want you to do is I want you to break down the lies from your family. Really break them down. Just like I said, write them down. What lies are you believing that your family told you? If they told you you're not enough or you're not pretty, go to the Word of God. He made you. He created you in His image. He made you just the way you are for His good purposes. You are valued. You are loved. You are His beloved. You are the apple of His eye. He'll never leave you, never forsake you. So don't believe those things. Write them down and literally put the opposite. For example, for me, when I was always late, when I started really learning about the Lord and how He can change me, I would say, Lord, it pleases me to be others-oriented. I want to live my life as others-oriented. I think that's why the founding Bible verse for the Home Club is, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Because I realized that I was so self-centered. And so it helped me when I started to look at, wow, if I am loving others better, I'm not going to keep people waiting. I'm not going to be a absolute lunatic in the morning when my kids are around and they're going, Mommy, wake up! You know, that's just not pleasing to anybody around me. So break down the lies, pray. Again, if media is causing you some trouble, turn it off. It's okay. Put your emergency numbers with a certain tone, but turn all the other stuff off. Really look at what your children are watching. Do not let media be your children's babysitter. You don't have any idea how children are being targeted online with commercials and with things that they want your children to believe. So really look at it and ask yourself, what is my children seeing? And then set your phone and really ask yourself, how much time are my littles on media? You're going to be really surprised. You're going to think it was only 5 minutes, but when you really look at it, it's a lot longer. So really look at it. And again, you don't have to be perfect in this area. I'm just asking you to be aware of it so that you can make a change. If we're not aware, we just think, oh, he's only been on that show for 25 minutes. And then we go, oh gosh, it's really been like an hour. I didn't even realize that. It's being aware so that we can make the changes and having your kids do other things. And over the next several weeks and next semester, we'll be talking about what are some things you can do with your littles and your kids so that they can entertain themselves and really be learning tactily and visually and audibly besides just a screen in front of them. And again, we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but if you feel you have some blind spots, let's say that you're hearing things from people like, you know, you're always defensive when somebody says something to you. Or, I don't feel like you ever hear me. I can only do those two things because those are the comments my husband and I have had over the last 24 hours. I need to ask the question to my husband, really, you don't feel like I hear you? How may I hear you better? And then he needs to be able to hear, honey, you just seem defensive. Now, he may not be able to hear me. And guess what? It is okay if your husband can't hear you. You are responsible for you changing first. So I'm responsible to say, okay, honey, I want to hear you. How can I hear you better? So ask the question of those things, because we all have blind spots and we all think that we do things so much better than we do. So ask people in your life to help you with what they see in your life that you know isn't working, but you don't know what to do about it. You know, you're all with me. You all feel like, well, I just feel like I'm this way or that way, but I don't know what to do. But I guess I'm okay. Be vulnerable with other people so that they can help you through it. The other thing is, Romans 12:12 says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That is one of the most important aspects of this whole mirroring thing is what gets in is what gets out. So please put scripture in your mind, in your spirit, in your home, in your car, whatever is going to help you. Like for me, mine is steadfastness. So it literally says, I will not be moved. I will not grow weary in well-doing. I will not change. I will not give up when I'm doing the Lord's work. I've got to remind myself constantly of those Bible verses so that I don't give up, so I don't get moved and I don't get tossed aside. What do you need to put your mind on to help you to combat the lies? So put those scriptures around. The other thing, put Christian music in your home. Have classical music. Do you know that when your kids listen to classical music like Handel, their brains, literally the synapses of their brain actually work better and they can study and learn better? Isn't that interesting? But what do? We just have so much chaos in our houses and then we wonder why there's no peace. So put on praise music. Put on, if your kids are really acting out and it's so stressful, then literally go, okay, what can I do as a mom? I'm going to put the softest, mellowest music on. And then your kids are you're going to literally see your kids do this. Because when we're in the presence of the Lord, the enemy has to flee. That confusion has to flee. And I can remember when my son Davis was little and Dirk and I, and we used to fight a lot, unfortunately. I'm not proud of it. But Davis would literally say, Mommy, let's put on some praise music and pray. Let's put on some praise music. So he would literally go, you know, those were the days where we had to do the CDs. He would go and get the CDs and he would put on praise music. And then he'd bring us together for us to pray. What was he saying? He was saying, you know what, I'm really uncomfortable right now. And I don't know what to do. But will you guys please work it out? So what was I reflecting? If I would have put praise music on first, and I would have been praying, and I would have been asking God to soften my heart to my husband who I was so mad at, that may not have happened. So we all have choices. So please remember that. And then remember to take every thought captive. Every thought captive to the obedience of Christ that is a lie about yourself. Be an imitator of Jesus. And if you don't know who Jesus is, then get a Bible that has all the red lines in it and read what he did and how he acted. Because he will show you how to be transformed in your thinking, in your words, and in your spirit man. So God bless you all and have a wonderful small group time. But if you're listening online, email us and we can send you the handouts. God bless you all.